Hi, I'm your host, Scott Dr. Jigs Goldfine, welcoming you to another episode of Where'd You Get Your Funk From? Shout out to PTFI for the funky theme music. Be sure to check out his new 2024 releases. Since this podcast was recently launched following many years of my work on the acclaimed Truth and Rhythm show, allow me to review the format. Where'd You Get Your Funk From focuses on the here and now with a broad range of creative and artistic guests sharing fascinating stories, experiences, and perspectives. It's a welcoming avenue to newer and independent musical acts, as well as established and still active musicians of any genre, as well as authors, filmmakers, actors, artists, collectors, and archivists, radio and podcast personalities, journalists, scholars, sound techs, promoters, photographers, and other creative people. A common thread is the show's standard opening question: where'd you get your funk from? This is much deeper than it may seem, as the answer need not strictly be about funky music, as not everyone has found the funk. It could hit on whatever type of music touches their soul or pleasure centers. Additionally, the question extends beyond music. Paraphrasing George Clinton, funk is whatever it needs to be to get you over the hump. Thus, guests can explain where they got their grit, perseverance, inspiration, talent, creativity, character, or other qualities that shaped them into who they are today. This serves as a springboard into candid, in-depth conversations. With that, let's get to it. Hey, this edition of Where'd You Get Your Funk From features multi-instrumentalist, producer, and record label owner Evan Taylor. He served as bandleader of the Bernie Worrell Orchestra and produced the P-Funk Keyboard Wizard's posthumous 2024 album, Bernie Worrell, From the WOOniverse. The collection features collaborations with Bootsy Collins, Fred Wesley, Norwood Fisher, Buckethead, Leo Nocentelli, Stanton Moore, Will Calhoun, Fred Schneider, Lennon and Jerry Harrison, among others. Taylor also runs Loantaka Records out of Glendale, New York, as well as the Loantaka Sound recording studio in downtown Los Angeles. Evan, thank you for being here. How's everything?
Great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, are you in Jersey? Is that what you said right now?
Yeah, I'm in Jersey at the moment, just spending some time east, doing a few gigs. But my home base is Hollywood.
Okay. Well, I'm a native, transplanted to the Charlotte area, but that was my stomping grounds, Los Angeles and Hollywood and all that. So,
Oh yeah?
yeah,
Oh, that's great.
yeah. I miss it because of the music is just so much more there than it is, in Charlotte. But yeah.
But Charlotte's beautiful. We did some sessions in Charlotte for the album. It's Steve Scales. He's based in Charlotte.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the first order of business on this show is asking the name of the show. Where'd you get your funk from? So, it has two parts. The first part is where'd you get your funk from in terms of music, whether it is funk or some other genre, whatever, where'd you get your foundation of music from? And then the second part of it is where'd you get your funk from in terms of your tenacity, your character, and that kind of thing.
That's a really interesting question and a great question. I would say where I got my funk from musically, um, was actually from being in a family that wasn't musical and having such an interest in music since it was separate from my life. It was something that was mystical, and I could kind of only see it from a distance until I expressed a deep interest in it, and then my parents kind of accommodated that by renting me my first drum set, and that's what made it so special. Is I know some people just grow up with music all around them, but for me, I had to pursue it, and um, and that's where I kind of got that deep appreciation for any ability to have it. Um, and I guess that kind of funnels over to the next question. Where I got my funk from also is kind of where I got my, I guess, personality in a certain way, is that funk just always had, to me, such style musically, like, fashion wise, just in every sort of way it had its swagger. And I appreciate that. I appreciate, stepping it up in special ways. And, we obviously know how far P-Funk took that, and all these other amazing funk bands with their presentations. And that's kind of where I value the effort put into um to the presentation, I'd say.
Hmm. So you touched on it a little bit, Evan, but tell us a little bit more about your musical development, in terms of your progression and your influences and your a couple of your top artists type of thing.
Um, well, I guess top artists is a little challenging for me, because I work between many genres, and top artist shifts between what I'm studying at the moment for the work I'm doing, the particular work I'm doing. So, um, I might like one day uh be listening to just the technique of Larry Graham within any context, or Prince, for instance, and be deeply immersed in that. But then I might listen to multi-instrumentalist, producer, film composer John Bryan, and really look up to him for a lot of the capacities that he's brought to music and film scoring. And both of those, the thing is, I am very interested in people who are multi-instrumentalists and multi-instrumentalism, and that's why I mentioned John Bryan and Prince, for instance, and also, like, countless people. Junie Morrison was always known as a great multi-instrumentalist. And I find it interesting having that, the specialist versus the kind of jack of all trades. And I've always found myself to be the jack of all trades, which kind of came in handy with that record we're about to discuss, because it really required that to piece it together. But my musical training, I did go to school for 2 years and dropped out, and then I kind of just came up on the scene, playing and learning from more seasoned musicians, and uh, working my way up into these opportunities that were just formative to my my career, really.
Who were a couple of performers you saw maybe as a kid or as a teenager though that you were like, wow.
Um, well, I would say Prince. Saw his musicology tour, which I went to with my entire family, and and that was I was really, really excited. My family was just like, okay, we're taking him to see Prince, and then they left super excited. They were like, "Oh my God, we didn't know it was gonna be like that, over the top and amazing." And I'm like, "Yeah, I was telling you that the whole time." And I would say, um, I got to see P Funk so many times, when I was like in high school. We One of the best shows I would say of theirs I saw was at the Apollo, and and my friends, we were trying to get there from Jersey, and we had no idea how to navigate to get to Harlem. And we were taking cabs, we were taking trains, we're doing everything we could to get there, and we arrived late. But there's something about arriving late with the show starting and walking straight into the funk as it was going on was this really memorable experience. And I remember seeing Bernie back there. That was when he was with them for a little bit again, and he was just in the back, just like doing his Bernie thing, and it was just a really special moment of just being overwhelmed with this music washing over me.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I've seen both of them many, many times live. I feel very fortunate to have done so. And that musicology, it's like the 20th anniversary just about of that right now. And did you see it at the Staples Center or
Yeah, I know. I
yeah.
saw it at what's the one in New Jersey, Giant Stadium maybe, or I don't remember.
Okay, you were in Jersey then. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was one too that they did a simulcast in movie theaters. Because I actually had to be in Las Vegas for an event when it was playing in Los Angeles, which is where I was living at the time. But I saw it on a movie screen
Oh
in
yeah.
Las Vegas, you know. So, uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, very cool. And then P Funk, that was I think you're talking about around the mid '90s when Dawson Power of a Mother, the fully Dawson Power of a fully operational mothership was out by Clinton, and then Bernie joined him for a little bit to sort of revisit the mothership at Central Park, and then I guess they did the Apollo also. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a great opportunity to see Bernie with them again for a short
Yeah.
period. Yeah.
It was pretty magical. Yeah. They did a show in Princeton too, and last minute they announced that Bernie was going to be there, and I booked it over to Princeton. I didn't have tickets or anything. I didn't. I thought it was a ticketed event, and it turned out to be a free event, and it was just it was that I think that was my first. I had seen Bernie with the Woo Warriors a number of times, but that was that was my first time seeing him with you know, George and the gang, and that was really really special.
And so, how did you meet Bernie?
Well, I met Bernie. Well, as I say, like, you know, that's a very common question, and I like, you know, how did it start? I'm like, well, it kind of started with a series of high fives at shows where I would just kind of go up to Bernie and be like, "You're amazing," and he'd be like, "Oh man," and like, you know, give me a little hug or whatever. But really, I I was working for a record label as an in-house producer, and part of my job was really to figure out interesting albums to make and with artists that they haven't worked with before. um and I was dying to make something with Bernie. He was on my short list of artists I wanted to work with, and they said, well, you know, if you can pursue this and make this happen, we will back you. And I approached Judy, and I said, you know, I'm from a record label. I would like to work with Bernie. I'd like to make a record with him of songs that he likes or whatever he wants to do. And she wrote back, "This is intriguing. Um, but that's not really an idea." And and I was like, okay, I got a response. I got a response. Now I need to come up with an idea. So I went into one of
Judy's
the
direct. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Judy, and she had every right to vet me like that, because I'm sure she received emails like that all day of just people, wanting to make records with Bernie. So I said, I'm gonna get you an idea shortly, and then I tried to just think of, what could we do? They're in New Jersey, I'm in LA right now. Um, we can't write together easily. Um, then like we're gonna have to deal with like publishing stuff, and it's just like this seems like a big mess of something, but I it has to happen for me. And then I thought like, oh well, maybe we could do some jazz standards, kind of funk style, or what Bernie would say, funkatized, and um, and that's the way where we already have the songs and we just have to do the arrangements. And after, I would say, a short period of working out the particulars with Judy, which also included sending my material, some work I've done, to her for Bernie to listen to. And there was a vetting process to see if I was capable for the job. Um, she she put me in touch with Bernie, and we started pre-production. And I came to New Jersey, and he literally showed up at my parents' house, and with a case that said Moog on it, and we drank Coca-Cola, and we opened up a jazz fake book and just started selecting songs that we liked. And he played a little keyboard. He got his little toy keyboard in the Moog case, and then I kind of sat down on the drums, and we um, we both nerded out over little ideas, and it was fun, and we had chemistry right off the bat. It just we we're both shy people, and Bernie can be on stage, really in command, and really, he looks like such a dominant force. But he was, like, as you know, because I'm sure you met him multiple times. Like, he's such a gentle force. So we were both like really respectful of each other, and like trying to like set a good example for each other. It was a really sweet moment. But that's really how it started.
And Evan, was that around 2010?
That was prior to 2010. Well, actually, it's probably like 29, 2009. Yeah.
And did he recognize you at all from the high fives at shows?
No. There were too many high fives going around.
Yeah. Um, so was it during that process that you began to get sort of a good sense of Bernie? Um, or did that come a little bit later? What can you share about, you already talked about that he was a little bit shy, but on stage, the exhibitionist, if you will, comes out. But what else might you share with viewers about Bernie's temperament and just what he was like to hang with?
Um, he was thoughtful about his words. Um, and he felt the same way about interacting with other people. He seemed to not like people who talked unnecessarily and didn't choose their words wisely. He was very kind of adamant about that, because he was so thoughtful about how he came across, and how he spoke to people, and just having respect for people's ideas. That's one thing that was really interesting about working with him collaboratively, and that this kind of also was involved with Bernie Worrell Orchestra, was that he really wanted everyone involved, and he reminded us that he wasn't always going to be around. And he said that plenty of times, but he reminded us that we had to carry the torch, and as a result, we had to continue to contribute, and he allowed us to do that. So Bernie, when I was working with him, there's no power dynamic of him being like, I'm Bernie Worrell, so I get to have the final say. We it was equal with the choices of songs on the standards record. He chose half, I chose half, and even with choosing musicians for the album, I chose some musicians that I wanted to work with. He chose some that he wanted to work with, and it's interesting because it matched some of our styles of who we kind of just gravitated towards. Like he had Melvin Gibbs on bass and Ronnie Drayton on guitar, and these are all just legends, just great players. And then, I brought in my share of legends with like Smokey Hormel on guitar and uh, Tim Lunsel on bass, and we uh, we were really everything was really diplomatic, and Bernie was he was a fun person to hang out with. He was funny too. Like he had a good sense of humor, and it was um I would say like an antiquated sense of humor where it was just like kind of old school slapstick comedy, but it was funny, and that's why it was just like f fun to make him laugh with like silly little things. It was you know it it was
Well,
all
I want to say, Evan, that quirkiness would come out in a lot of times when he would do his solos and throw in like a lot of like, even cartoon themes and whatever. Just,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you love that stuff. You love little cartoon things and stuff like that, and that was a fun thing playing to try to play off that, like when he'd be like "Dun, dun, 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 dun," and I'd be like "Ch-ch," like once we were well oiled, we were playing off each other with little silly themes and stuff like that. It was all fun, but yeah, he also he liked his space, and on tour that became apparent that that Bernie liked our group communal breakfasts um and dinners and stuff like that, but he also liked to have a lot of space, and he required a lot of space. And the thing is, I also require a lot of space too, and we were kind of like in the same place sometimes when we're like, okay, we just need to like go to our hotel rooms or go to like the green room is too crowded, we're gonna go outside and hide away somewhere, and so it that became apparent that he needed that time to refresh and to really center himself.
And how did it evolve from that first project, Evan, to becoming part of the BWO?
um well, it all started from um I thought maybe Standards had, extremely mixed reviews and poor sales, and I was thinking like, what can we do to try to remedy this, and maybe we can do another Standards, kind of do it better, volume two, uh, do it while at that point I had moved back to the East Coast, and I was like, if we were together, we could spend more time on it. So we reached out to a record label, and they were interested. We had a meeting. They implied that they were ready to go to make this album, and then we stopped hearing from them. And and then I finally got on the phone with the owner of the label, and he said that one of his interns said, "Who's Bernie Worrell?" And it struck a chord in him, and he decided it was a bad investment. And at that point, I was demoralized, and I think Bernie was bummed too. And we said, what can we do with the resources we have to build this up again? And um, and we just decided, let's put together a really, really great um, band. And the Woo Warriors were an excellent band, and that's something I really respected. But the thing is, um, at the time, he wasn't able to have horns or, a larger scale band. So what we had to do was, get creative with our budgets and our resources. And our first show was all volunteers, all the musicians, and we ended up, I think we sold out the club, and then all the volunteers ended up getting paid. Judy comes in, she's just like, "Okay, I'm paying everyone." Um, we made money, and then we were like, "Okay, we're on to something." And we retained all of those musicians throughout the course of BWO, and it was all from referral to referral. I would call one person and say, "Do you know a trumpet player who's great, who would humor doing a show, just one show, just try it out, see how," and it would be like, just like, I was making calls, making calls. We rehearsed at my parents' house, and we were ready to go. And I think that Judy really respected the show. She thought it was a really strong lineup, and the people who showed up at the show were really excited. And originally, when I proposed this to the venue, because I was doing the booking at the time, um, the talent buyer asked, "Do you think that you could even draw 12 people?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" And then that club, who shall remain nameless, ended up calling us up on a regular basis to uh, to to play. And then we decided that the next step is not touring and going on the road, but playing locally. And we tried to play every month in somewhere in the tri-state area that was, accessible. And we did that every month for a few months, until we were able to get a booking agent who one day called and said, "I think you're on your way to your first national tour as BWO." And it kind of, took off from there. But it really was a process of, what I would say is, it really came down to personality, because everyone in that band was dedicated and had a vision too, and they had like a dream for it to work out and to be something. And we didn't have any people off the bat who were complaining about this not working out, or us not, you know, escalating fast enough. And it was all kind of like, it worked for Bernie's pace too. He believed in it, and he just, said that, if we just kept at it, um it would blossom. And it did. And it was a really special, exciting time.
Wow, thank you for going to that detail, Evan. That was really fascinating. Really took like a grassroots rebuild.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's a great lesson for any struggling musicians out there. To just keep at it, and as long as you believe in what you're doing, um, and you're doing it for the right reasons. What was a typical set list like back then? Was it just a mix of Bernie's material, Funkadelic Parliament, and some of the stuff you guys had done together?
Yeah, we started off with some Bernie solo material, some standards, and some P-Funk, and that was like our first few shows. And then when BWO started writing original music, it ended up being um, mostly BWO and Bernie solo stuff, and then we might for an encore do a P-Funk song, but we kind of stopped doing the P-Funk thing um, because George was doing that, Bootsy was doing that too. So we were trying to do something different, and I think it was in we played a show in Raleigh once, and this guy came up to me after the show, and he's like, I came here hoping to hear all the P-Funk hits, and he's like, you guys didn't play one P-Funk hit. It was all original BW material, and he's like, and I had a blast. He's like, I loved it, and he's like, and I realized that I didn't have to hear those hits. I could really independently enjoy Bernie's new music, and that really meant a lot to me because I think that people started getting to see Bernie in this other context of evolution. And that was kind of cool to see him kind of have this resurgence of energy and branch out in all these different ways on stage. And we were trying to follow him because he was doing, you know, the shows were starting to get progressively more intricate, and it was really like as a musician a workout. It was good. The set lists were great, but sometimes we would, since a lot of it was improvised, sometimes he would spend like 15 minutes on a song, and sometimes that song might be 35 minutes, and we just had to watch each other and see where it would go. And once it was a well-oiled machine, we were just we just kind of reached that point where it was just flowing, and and there kind of weren't wrong notes anymore. It was just it got to that point. It was very for a musician, it was just a really um I would say enriching, like, kind of situation that I haven't gotten to have often in my career. Um so yeah, it was
I was
pretty
thinking liberating, was the word I was thinking when you're saying that.
exactly,
But
it was liberating. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so that was during like what years are we talking? 2012 to 2014 or 15 or
Yeah, around
yeah,
then. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and during that time when you were working with Bernie, did you ever, meet or interact with any of the P-Funk guys themselves, like George or Bootsy or any of those guys?
Well, Bootsy joined us for a show. He came in, and that's also like one of the very surreal moment to me. I think we George had a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Apollo, so a lot of people were in town for that, and we reached out to Bootsy and kind of negotiated that he would do one song. And what we did is we rehearsed that one song, and then Bootsy came on stage and played several other songs that we had not rehearsed. And so we're trying to keep up with what he's doing.
Like a
And
Lay's potato chip, you can't just do one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we had to book a venue last minute. So we booked the Bitter End in the Village, and which is kind of a funny venue to have Bootsy in. And I think it ended with like Bootsy walking on tables, getting people to sing and chant, and then he kind of ran out the door and like a SUV with like tinted windows took him away or something. It was just wild. But we worked with yeah, a number of people from that community. Also, Blackbird McKnight. He would join us for the California shows. Like even without rehearsal, he would just hop on and do all the dates with us. We had for the P Funk All Stars, Eric McFadden joined us, um, and I think Greg Thomas. Uh, Yeah, a number of the P-Funk people did hop on stage every once in a while. Bernie, if they're in the audience or we're at a festival, they'd kind of hop on and join us for a little bit. But other than that, yeah, usually we didn't really collaborate in the studio. That was something that I really wanted is for us to have done more collaborations in the studio with some of those people, but I think it was just kind of tricky with the politics and just the coordination of it. So
Yeah, I understand. And you were playing drums? Is that
I was, yeah, at the
yeah,
time.
okay. So now was that a period where had Bernie stopped pretty much working with Bill Laswell at that point? Because of course he had a long history there.
I think he might have done a few dates. Oh, actually, yeah, he was still working with Bill Laswell. Um, because I remember um Bernie calling me and he's like, "I'm going to Ethiopia with Bill Laswell," um and it was actually a funny moment because I think Bernie was like waiting somewhere for a plane or whatever, and I'm like, wow, I got one of those calls from like the airport when someone's bored, but it was Bernie and he called me. But it was, like, but he was. But just to get back to the topic, he he was still doing, I think, sporadic dates with Bill.
Okay. Um, so how long or how close to Bernie's passing were you still working with him or interacting or in communication with him?
Um, I was I left the band at a certain point, and it was just a point where I wanted to start trying to do different things. And since I had built the band and put in, I mean, everyone put in so much energy, and I put in a lot to develop it, and I needed some space at a certain point. So after that, leaving, I think that there was another project that I talked to Judy about having Bernie involved in, and we and that project was with it was supposed to be I was going to play drums, then it was Bernie, Mike Watt, and Teresa Wayman from the band Warpaint, and unfortunately that's when Bernie it was disclosed that he was sick. I got a call right around the holidays. I was shopping at a mall, and I got a call from Judy Worrell, and I was a little surprised to get that call, and she mentioned that Bernie was sick, and I don't remember what the rest of the particulars were, why we were talking about that at that point, or maybe there was some change in our plan or business or whatever, but needless to say, he was not doing well, and things were changing, and and I didn't really have much contact with him after that. Um, I think the last time I saw him, there was a benefit at Webster Hall in New York, and it was kind of a star-studded spectacle thing, and I was hanging out. My whole mission was to try to get to talk to him, but there were just so many people there who were surrounding him, and my last kind of interaction was he was getting in the car to go home, and I was like kind of knocking on the window, and he like kind of looked up, and then he saw it was me, and he waved, and he was all excited, and that was the last time I saw him. So it was pretty rough. I I just there's one day where I just started getting texts where people were like, "I'm so sorry," and I'm like, "About what?" And then I was like, "I think I know what this is alluding to," and I literally just typed Bernie Worrell RollingStone.com, and I found out that way. Uh, and that was rough. It was really hard. To not really properly get to say goodbye. But yeah,
Well, we said goodbye to Bernie, I believe it was June 2016. And it was
yeah,
just a couple of months after Prince. It was brutal.
yeah.
Um,
Crazy.
he was also, we didn't mention, but he was also working late in his life with Kuiks. Is that how you say it? The
Yeah,
Native
from Western
American,
Sound. Yeah,
those guys. So I don't know if you had any, contact with them at all or whatever, but they were in the mix too at that time.
yeah. That all started because we were doing a Kickstarter to get a tour vehicle, and Preston Singletary helped us out with that. I think we did a private party for him. I just want to make sure I can disclose that, but we we did a private party for him, and then I think that he kind of hit it off with Bernie, and then Bernie started working with him, and I think Stanton Moore was involved in the project at that point too. They were uh, because Bernie kept going out to Seattle to to work with them. But yeah, that was another project. Yeah, towards the end, I know that Bernie was that was pretty dear to Bernie. Yeah,
He did some very avant-garde stuff with them.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, so that kind of gets us up to, I mean, it shifts several years later, but this project that just came out this year, and I want you to know, I don't often do this kind of thing, but I stood in line in the hot sun on record store day outside waiting just to get this. Um, so I was very excited about it. And when Judy was on a couple of years ago, she actually touched on, a project that was coming, and she didn't have too many details, but I knew it was in the works, and you always hope it comes to fruition, and it certainly did. So, can you tell us about the genesis of that project?
Yeah, well, basically it started out with I was in a sessions. I don't remember what I was doing, but I was in a session and my phone rang again. It was Judy Worrell, and that's always the beginning of something substantial that's going to be discussed. So um, she said, "Do you know any record labels? I need a record label." And I said, "Well, I have a modest label." And she's like, "Oh, great. Well, like, you'd be interested in possibly releasing this album." And I was like, "Well, I have to think about it." She kind of gave me a synopsis of like where it was at, and I said I had to think about it, and I did, and I thought it might be a cool way to honor Bernie, and then she explained that she found these tapes. At that point, I really had no idea of the actual state of the record. So I was approaching it from a record label, and at that point, and not as a producer. Um, and I had always, towards that during the BWO days, I was Bernie's co-producer. So, so I guess it seemed fitting that I would be the one to take on the role to handle the production. I guess that was kind of assumed. Um, but really, I got after I committed to it, I got a hard drive in the mail of the uh, digitally transferred files.
Wait, I'm sorry, Evan. What year was that when you first agreed?
That was about 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I got a hard drive of the digital transfers, and I sat down with my engineer Spencer, and we went through the tracks to determine um, what state they were in of completion, and determined that they were far from completion, most of them, and that they really need to be reworked. And we started kind of making notes, and I started making my list of who I would call to take on certain roles. Um, and ultimately, it was well, an interesting thing that my engineer Spencer said in the beginning before we touch this work, or can you excuse me for 1 second? Sorry. Uh, and sorry. Oh. Yeah, an interesting thing that Spencer said, my engineer, before we really got into this work, is like, we need to remember, and Spencer had worked with Bernie too. He said, like, we really need to remember to not just do things that we like, but to, honor Bernie and do things that he would have liked. And and he probably was saying that to me because I can go off in different directions with just fun stuff that I would have probably done with Bernie. But but it was a good thing to remember. But it's sometimes it's hard to even sum up this whole project in a nutshell, because it went all over the country practically, with like remote recording too, and getting special guests, and I would say also our like unsung heroes of all the behind the scenes people who were arrangers or um, lyricists, and it was uh, it was a big project, but I think that from what I heard, people enjoyed it. They liked it, and I don't really, I haven't really kind of checked in on any reviews or anything, and I haven't really seen any reviews, um, but I've gotten a number of calls from musicians who really liked it and felt, and musicians who worked with Bernie who really felt that it represented um, what Bernie would have done had he been around to complete this work. And that's like, I can't ask for anything better than that. Um, because a lot of it was anticipating or, doing, as I say, the forensic work of uh, of studying Bernie's techniques and his mix ideas, his arrangement ideas, all those things, and trying to um, put them together. But of course, we chose personnel who were collaborators of his, and they did those parts. And there were some people who weren't who never got to work with Bernie who added a lot to this project. Um, and that was good too because Bernie would have wanted fresh blood in the project. He would have wanted that. Um, so that kind of is on brand with how he would have handled a project like this. But yeah, I mean that's part one.
Well, let me just jump in and tell you that the reviews, although there may not be that many, actual media reviews, reviews from Bernie lovers and followers and P-Funk people are very positive, including myself. It's beyond what I could have expected. To be honest with you, I mean, I like every song, and it's just really solid from end to end. It's just a real gift, never expected all these years after losing him that we would get something like this. So just, on behalf of all the Bernie lovers and fans, and thank you for what you've put together.
I mean, it was my way of connecting with him again, and not having him for so many years. It was kind of like we were back at it, and I know a lot of us who worked with him felt that way when we were in the studio and we were cutting parts. It was just I remember Scott Hogan, who toured in BWO. He was like felt like I was with him. He was like I just felt like I played with him again, and I'm just like I know it's amazing. It's just like we're at it again with Bernie, and then like there is just that drop when you realize he's not there. But it still it was the closest thing we had left to being with him, and that was special. It was really something unique
Well,
and special to have. Yeah.
yeah, just the variety of material, really makes you feel like, it's kind of a retrospective of all the different types of genres and influences that, made him who he was. And how um, how old were some of those tracks? I mean, how far did they go back, do you think?
I don't think they go any further back from the early 90s. Um, and it's funny because when I first heard about this project, I was really hoping that like there's something from like 1976 I got to work on, like but then yeah, I heard it was from like some later years, and there's so much great stuff. Like he was doing really amazing work then, and a lot of it got shelved, and it was uh it was a process, we did have to work on the sonics to try to make something that sounded a little more, um, I wouldn't use the word contemporary, but I would use the word like kind of more of a timeless sound because some of it was geared towards sounding modern for the time, but like now it sounded kind of dated. So we had to work with the Sonics on certain things, and that was the surgery we put into trying to make a record that was cohesive and also sounded like, it belonged together. And and I think I did see like one thing that was, I accidentally saw um someone referred to it as fragmented, but I don't really. I think if you know Bernie and his diverse like style, and it it's not fragmented. It's exactly like um a representation of what he was capable of doing. And that's the whole point of like the last offering of, so far, unless we find something else, the last offering of Bernie music is to give a whole span of genres, so people can, like, I always said that like I consider this album also like a lesson, a crash course in Bernie. Like if you want to learn more about Bernie, like listen to this album and hear like all the things he's done, because even though we added certain musicians, certain arrangements, certain vocalists, all the Bernie parts are Bernie parts. There's nothing tampered with those parts. We just cleaned up some of the sonics and added some special guests for, and all the guests were people who Bernie would have called anyway, and uh and yeah, it's kind of a crash course in Bernie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the P-Funk feel. It's got the New Orleans thing. It's got the some of the Lastwell kind of fusiony things, and
Mhm.
for sure, it covers it all. Um, and some of the records he put out anyway during his time, especially with Lastwell, I mean, they were very diverse.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Hmm.
um, even probably my favorite record of his before this one was Electronic Science, and even
Oh
that
yeah.
one has some diverse stuff on there.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that was a great one.
yeah. So but the compositions when you got them, did they mostly just have Bernie's keyboard parts and maybe a drum machine, or what was?
Yeah, some were Bernie's keys and drum machines. Um, some had uh actual drums and bass, but those were, some of them were very dated, so we had parts recut um to sound a little more, I guess, like timeless, or just like not specifically, devoted to one era. Um, we had some parts recut, and then yeah, a lot of it. The ones that were really fun were the ones that were Bernie to a drum machine, because um there's so much Bernie that you could hear. Like you could hear all the nuanced ideas that he had, that he would have developed into something great. And the um what I always say is like the songs that were the most fun to work on were the ones that initially seemed to um to me to be the ones that were less I guess just developed and exciting at the moment, and those were the ones that, like, I would have like a light bulb moment and be like, oh, well, if we turn this around, and then I'm like, why am I thinking this way? I'm like, oh, it's because Bernie taught me that. Like, and it was great because, I kind of like reviewed my notes from Bernie University, like, and got to really implement those lessons, because I always say that Bernie was like my best teacher that I've ever had. So so I got to really implement those ideas that he taught me about mixing, about arrangements, uh, and it was just a great experience. It really was truly, like, from start to finish. Like, there's nothing that was I mean, there are things that were challenging, but there's nothing that I would say uh, was a drag in any sense. It was always just kind of fun.
And the ones with lyrics, were those already in existence or you added lyrics?
We added lyrics, like the first song, "Distant Star," just to talk about a few of them with lyrics. "Distant Star" is about Bernie, and if you listen to the lyrics, and it was primarily written by Jared Samuel, who is just a great all-around musician, and he was co-producer on that song too. And he we we set together, and he had me just talk about my just like we're talking now, like he had me talk about my experiences with Bernie, and also combine that with biographical information about Bernie. But he really wanted me to talk about Bernie's personality, and and then write a song based on Bernie coming basically from the WOOniverse to visit us. And then the last song, which Jared contributed to, um, which is Wait for the WOOniverse, is Bernie going back to the WOOniverse. And that is, those are kind of the bookends. But then there are other songs with lyrics. There's lyrics I contributed, like Soldiers from the Stars. That was a song because Bernie was featured in the Smithsonian's exhibit on Afrofuturism, and I said it would be interesting to write a song about Afrofuturism, considering that he was featured as uh, you know someone in that exhibit. So I started writing something like that, and that became that song because originally that song kind of was a jam, and we really reworked it. Had Daru Jones recut drums. We had Eric McFadden play an amazing guitar solo. It was that was a fun song to do, but the lyrics, Bernie, an interesting thing, which is again on brand for working with Bernie, is Bernie didn't like to write lyrics, and he generally did not write lyrics. So it was on brand to have another person write lyrics. um, because even when we were working together, he wouldn't really do it. So that was because people have asked about that, like, well, how do you feel about adding lyrics? I said, well, that's what we would have done anyway. So um, yeah, that's
So I guess you decided which tracks kind of had the space and composition to lend themselves better to adding lyrics than some of the other ones.
Yeah, some had natural structures for a verse and a chorus, and I feel like it was pretty obvious the songs that needed to be these like Laswell like kind of jams, and then the songs that needed to be songs with hooks and vocal hooks, and it became apparent. Some songs, it was a very last minute thing, like "Heap and Bowl of Gumbo." Um, that was worked all instrumental to practically the end of the song, where we're just like, something is missing, and we have these New Orleans musicians, and how about we just get a bunch of people in the room and start chanting about gumbo, and then we had Lonnie Marshall. He's from the band Weapon of Choice. He kind of came in and just ad-libbed, and he has such a charismatic voice that it was just almost like a little P-Funk kind of character, and that was a really fun one because that was unexpected, and it was probably the last one we submitted. Um, and then there's songs like the intro, Reflections on a Bird, which that was a uh, that was a recording, I think, on, I don't know who recorded it, but it was just of Bernie playing piano, and probably, I don't even know if he knew he was being recorded, but someone captured that performance of Bernie playing piano, and he used to do that when there was a piano in a room. He would just kind of gravitate over to the piano and start playing, and I guess someone captured it, and then what we did is um, we added the bird sounds because Bernie used to record birds and kind of analyze their calls, and that was a thing he really loved to do, is listen to the birds. So we really wanted the record to start off with the birds, and then there was some modular synthesis added by Nick Montoya, who has worked extensively with Bernie, and was very dear to Bernie. But yeah, there are a lot of hidden moments in this album of just nuance and texture and just and narrative in a way that it is worth a discussion, I would say.
Yeah, it's pretty epic in that way. Did you work on tracks simultaneously, or did you kind of try to do them one at a time?
We did them simultaneously, and we bounced around um, different studios depending on who we were working with, and then some stuff was remote. So um, some were done at my studio. A lot of it was done at my studio, but then also Studio G in Greenpoint um, was a major studio that we used for this record, and then also Pale Moon in Cambridge, New York. That's Jared Samuel's studio, and Studio G is Tony Mamoni's studio, who is an engineer um, for all of our stuff in Greenpoint, and yeah, we bounced around. It was and and then also, like I mentioned, in Charlotte we went to Old House Studio, which is a really cool studio, to get Steve Scales, because I really wanted to have Steve Scales in person, and I flew there to do those sessions with Steve on two occasions, and it was just a matter of wherever we needed to go, um, we would go to get the bits and pieces we needed to have it be on brand and organic.
Were a lot of the guests though done just remotely, or how what was the balance of you kind of being with them versus them doing it totally remotely?
Well, I mean, a lot of people ask about the Bootsy track, and Bootsy's vocals were already recorded before I entered the project, and that track was not produced by me. That was produced by Mike Moon Rubin, who was in the Woo Warriors, and that was kind of near completion before I was brought on. But with some were done remotely, like Sean Ono Lennon, he did that from his studio. Um, Fred Schneider, we were all in the same room, and that was fun. Um, we kind of set up in his neighbor's house. We set up a little studio, just to make it convenient for him because he's super busy. I think with B-52's schedule, so we set up a little studio, and he did his part, and some of the other guests, like Miho Hattori, she did it from her house, and it was a mix of some people showed up and did it in person. Steve Bernstein came into the studio to do his because we were on that wanted that to be really improvisational or live and he came in and it was a mix. It was a mix of remote and live, and we just did what we had to do to get it done. And it's challenging with the remote stuff because sometimes you don't know what you're gonna get, and you just have to have really great communication to do it. I remember like working with Marco Benevento, for instance. Like I gave him notes of exactly what I wanted, and then he took it in a really great direction. And then he gave me um, multiple options of each of my ideas, and then he gave me like a extra track of just something I didn't ask for that ended up being like the secret sauce to the track, So um, it's interesting just working with people in different capacities. It's just all about communication and trying to be on the same page. So, but I think that like anyone with the right music sensibility to be on the project generally did a really great job.
Were any of the titles already attached to the tracks, or you created them, or
Um, the one I think the only one that stayed intact was "What Have They Done to My Funk?" That's the one with Bootsy on it that Mike produced. That was the only one that stayed. The rest were all changed. Um, just for the sake of not for any like reason like publishing or anything like that. It was just to kind of freshen it up, have there were all working titles. We wanted to try to have some themes going on, and that was the fun part. Like I always really enjoy sequencing a record and um, working with titles, but yeah, generally like my favorite part is just sitting down and figuring out a sequence that works. Um, and yeah, that's all a lot of fun.
well, the titles, throughout harken to other, Bernieisms,
Yeah.
so definitely has that common thread. Uh, and contusion. What was the backstory to that?
Well, Contusion was a a funkadelic track that instrumental that was gifted to us by Westbound Records, and it was written by Bernie and Billy Bass Nelson, who I think deserves a lot of credit for uh, his contributions to that band. Especially as I was talking to Judy um, about him recently, and it's a very special. I think Eddie's in there too, but it really shows like this bond between Bernie and Billy, um, with that kind of composition. But we were thrilled when we found out that we were going to be able to include that track, because we didn't know until uh, we partnered with Org Music, who works a lot with Westbound, that they were able to facilitate that, and that was definitely a highlight.
Mhm. And, did you have to get approval from Judy? Like, did she have to like what she heard or like what was happening, or did she have any, yay or nay power that way?
No, Judy said that she didn't really want to hear it until it was done. So I'm I'm glad she liked it and she did. So um, I think that that's like the excuse me. That was for me as a producer the best case scenario, because generally with a project of this kind of stature, like there would be someone looking over my shoulder, but Judy had that trust, and we had a good working dynamic, and again it was all about communication, and it worked out very well. Worked out very well. She's very pleased, and it meant a lot to me that she felt the way that she did about it. It really meant a lot to me.
So did you pretty much empty whatever was there, or were there still some tracks that didn't make the cut, or?
That is a common question. There are tracks that were not completed for various reasons. Some were logistical things where we were trying to get certain guests, and we just couldn't coordinate it in time of the record release. So those songs were shelved, but it's only like two or three. Um, I think two were just like not finished, like not really worked on. And there's one that was like near completion, and didn't really get there. Um, I wonder about how many reels of tape are out there with more Bernie material. Um, and I'm sure that Bernie recorded a lot, and I'm sure there's more somewhere. It would be great to do another volume. I would definitely be interested in that, but we'll see what surfaces, because things might come out of the woodwork once the album circulates more, and we are really putting a lot of energy into getting this record into people's ears, and we have submitted it for Grammy consideration, because we really want Bernie to have a Grammy, and that would be really magical if even a nomination, if he had that to his name, that would be really great. So to all voting members of the Academy, definitely consider, you know, Bernie Worrell.
for sure. And it's on CD now too, right?
It's on CD, yeah, CD, vinyl, and streaming.
Hmm. So, and tell us a little bit about the great art too and the package.
Yeah, the art was done by a an artist named Reagan Buchanan. She I had been following her work for a while. She had some really great portraits, black and white portraits, and I she also wrote a book called The Secret History of Black Punk, all about black punk bands and music. And I had been a fan of her work for a while. I met her through my sister, who's a cartoonist and visual artist, and something just resonated, and she seemed right for the job. And I approached her, "Would you consider this?" And we talked a little bit about it, and she agreed. And then she was like, "How do you feel about satellites?" And I was like, "That sounds kind of perfect. Could you make them out of components of like Moog synthesizers and pedals and stuff like that?" And she's like, "Yeah, I think I can do that." And she just knocked it out of the ballpark with the cover. People just really love the art. It's really special.
Yeah, it's not only a great album, but I'm having a hard time thinking of a cover that Bernie did outside of P-Funk better than this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very cool. That should be up for a Grammy too.
Yeah.
Package, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So is there anything else you want to add about the project? Got a couple more questions, but hey, congratulations again. Crowning achievement for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm just really grateful for the opportunity, and I hope that people enjoy the record and really, take time with it to consume it and sit with it and reflect on Bernie and all that he's done and given us, and just remember to be grateful that he's given us this amazing contribution to music, and to never forget that.
And such an innovator. Man,
Yeah.
Bill Laswell, there must be some canned stuff there.
Yeah.
When I talked to him, I think he said that Bernie played on, like a couple hundred albums worth of stuff with him. So I'm not sure that all of that's seen the light of day yet. So
Yeah.
maybe.
Reach out to Bill.
So being a P-Funk fan, a little bit of fun, Evan. What would be your top 3 to 5 Bernie or P-Funk tracks favorites?
Oh man, that's hard. Oh yeah, Gaming on Ya is one of my
Oh yeah,
favorite.
on
Uh,
Clones, Dr. Funkenstein.
yeah. Do That Stuff
That's
is
on the same album.
yeah. I guess I love that whole album. And then like Mothership Connection, I just that uh that's always been one of my favorite just Bernie moments, like just what he does. Um there. I mean the list goes on. I'm really bad with remembering song names. I can the funny thing about me is I can remember who played on a track, but I can't remember the name of the song.
I'm good with names of songs, but I'm bad with lyrics.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, well, what was a couple of your favorite ones to play on when you played with Bernie that or either just BWO tracks or one that we might know from one of his other groups?
Um, my favorite, which was the seemed to be the crowd pleaser, was the song "Thug,"
Hmm.
and that one I felt like every time we did that, it would really just bring the house down, and also from our catalog, I would say uh, "Get Your Hands Off" was a fun one. That was a fun one to produce. I think that was the second song I produced for BWO, and of the P-Funk stuff, I think that Mothership Connection always always went in some interesting direction when Bernie would take his solo. And that's for me, I would just like lay down the groove and just, not do anything else and just keep the groove going and just let Bernie like go into outer space. And there's always something interesting that would happen like during that solo. And one time he was playing his art pro soloist and it died in the middle of the song, and he was really shredding on it, and then it just crapped out. And it was I think he was just like, "She done," or whatever. It was just like, it was just something funny. It was like, there's a video of it somewhere. But and also just being able to watch Bernie's clavinet playing, like he just played it differently than other people. It was so unique. Um, it was always special. Yeah.
So, Evan, any other projects that you'd like to share with the folks while I have you?
I have some stuff in the works. I I'm going to be working with kind of a new band with Teresa Wayman, who was supposed to be in that project with Bernie that never happened. And we've been writing together, and we're hopefully going to have some live shows together with a really killer band. And we'll be announcing that shortly. Um, but yeah, and I still have, I've been releasing my own material too, so that's I have some new material coming out.
Why don't you give people the website for Loantaka or whatever you like so that they can, follow you?
Yeah, generally, the best way to kind of catch what I'm doing is evantaylormusic.com, and that has all the links to everything. And you can kind of catch up with me there.
Okay. Wow. I'm so glad that they brought you in for this project. I think it was so important to have somebody that had been with Bernie and kind of understood, some of the um, subtleties and nuances and just the right flavor and mix to pull it off, And so, again, I can't congratulate you enough and thank you enough. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can to continue to promote this because anyone who's a music lover, I believe, is going to at least find something they like on this collection.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about all this. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate it.
So thank you, Evan. And it was great getting to know you better. And I wish you the best of luck. And I'll be looking out for that project as well that you mentioned. So I know it's going to
Okay.
be something worthwhile based on your proven history here.
Okay. Thank you.
And there you have it. Thank you for hanging into the conclusion. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Where'd You Get Your Funk From and that you make it part of your routine. Please subscribe to the Funk Stuff channel and like, share, and comment on episodes. Also be sure to set your notification alerts so you never miss a video when it posts. The usual schedule for this show is world premieres Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's on YouTube. The shows are added to the funkandstuff.net website on Wednesdays and subsequently available as audio-only podcasts through most leading providers. That's every Thursday. Please reach out to me anytime at scottg@funkandstuff.net with comments, ideas, or guest requests. If you can, please support this channel through YouTube's monetary features or submit donations at funkandstuff.net. Buy awesome music apparel like this shirt I am wearing. Where'd you get your funk from? As well as apparel of your favorite artists. It's all at the Funk and Stuff store. You can also get my book, Everything's on the One, The First Guide to Funk, at Amazon. I thank you sincerely for your interest and support. For now, until next time, this is Scott Dr. Jigs Goldfine asking, where'd you get your funk from?